Well, in my younger days, I did not get to know my father really well, and he never spoke to me about my ancestry at all. And I think the reason for this, from his point of view, was his feeling that 3 generations of Brooke rule in Sarawak were probably as much as the world would take. Now the situation is very interesting because the British government, one can understand, always had a problem with the Brooke family because they first of all had been asked to recognise a British subject as the ruler of a foreign country, which was unprecedented and which they had never done, and which they didn't do until they were actually pushed into it. And they were pushed into it because America first recognized Sarawak as an independent sovereign state. In 1850, the Rajah had ceded Sarawak to the King of England, and he'd been gracious enough to accept it. And I was rung up by the press, and that was the first I'd heard about that particular situation. My father hadn't, and the people of Sarawak certainly hadn't been consulted. And I was asked sort of what my response was to that, and I said, well, I hadn't heard about it before, and my father hadn't, the people of Sarawak hadn't, and I would fight tooth and nail to ensure that they were properly consulted about whatever government they were to have after the war, after they'd been liberated. And so that was the beginning of a 5-year constitutional campaign, because my father and I started receiving telegrams and letters from Sarawak saying that they didn't want to be a British colony, that they wanted the Brooke family back, and would we do our utmost to get the Rajah to change his mind, and would we come out and see for ourselves what they really wanted. They tried to prevent me from going further to Singapore, but they had to lift the ban on my entry to Singapore. And but they maintained it on Sarawak, and they maintained it for 17 years when I was banned under this undesirable persons enactment. There was this extraordinary, I would say, spiritual affinity between my family and the Sarawak peoples. There's no other way that it can be described, really.